Hello, everybody. I am the Dorseman, and welcome back to another pixel art vlog style video. This one is kind of unique because it's all about my second channel. I'm a co host on that channel for a podcast called the Just One More Level podcast. And if you guys haven't seen that, it's a pretty simple concept. Myself and my friend Christian play video games once a week. We pick a game to play, sometimes based on user suggestion, and we only play about the first hour or so of the game, just enough to get kind of a feel for what the game is and what it's like to play. And we do that because we realize that in this day and age, it's kind of hard to sit down and play games for hours and hours at a time unless you're really into it and that's something that you're really looking forward to play. So we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a podcast that reviewed games, but not after having completed the game, but only after having sampled the game? So we give a game a rating based on whether or not we would play it for just one more level. We've had a lot of fun creating this podcast. Coming up on about almost a year now, and we are in our second season. We decided to end our 2020 season and call it the first season, and then make a second season. And we gave ourselves a little bit of time between the first season and the second season. And I thought, hey, what better what better use of this time than to use it to create an intro sequence? We always wanted an intro sequence to go along with the intro song that we would use for the podcast, which is something that I threw together on this software called Bosca Seal. And it was just supposed to be this old chip tune type thing. It was supposed to sound like a classic video game. And I thought, oh, it would be so cool if we had a pixel art intro animation to go along with this old fashioned sounding pixel art theme song. But unfortunately, at the time when we were making the first season, it's not something that I really had the time to dedicate to. So I took the time in between the first and second season to get something created here. And I had a lot of fun with it, but unfortunately, I'm not a master at making pixel art. I'm not very practiced with the software involved, but I knew enough to kind of feel my way through realizing rather, what I had imagined for the intro. The intro kind of started out as a joke between myself and Christian. I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool for the introduction to have us flying through space like superheroes, land on the moon and plant our flags, and then it'll zoom out with the logo? And he said, yeah, that sounds great. So I was kind of trapped at that point. But it's okay. I actually really enjoyed working on it, and that's the entire reason that our thumbnail looks like it does, is because that was supposed to be the final frame of animation in this intro sequence that I didn't get around to making until the second season. So I thought I would do a little voiceover for the process of me making this intro sequence and just kind of talk about my thought process involved and how I created what I have created. So this is what that is. This is just kind of a vlog style video talking about the difficulties that I had making this a reality and how I got from point A to point B. What you're seeing now on the screen is the first little bit of animation for the video. It is Christian and I, our sprites, flying towards the screen with space as our background. And this was the most difficult part of the process because if you've seen any of my other pixel art videos, you'll know that I struggle the most with perspective, getting everything to look just right. So I knew in my head what I wanted, but as anybody that works with art both professionally and on an amateur level will tell you, nobody really just thinks of something in their head and just immediately translates that to whatever medium they're working with, be it digital or more traditional. There's always some kind of process of planning and doing sketching, or in my case, using concept art to kind of get a grasp on the perspective of what I was working with. And what I used was very simply just Google Images. I just Googled superhero poses And then I used a very crude clip art of a superhero in this hero pose flying towards the screen. And I modeled our characters off of that using our original sprites from the thumbnail. Then came the part of animating this, which was very difficult. um, I knew from just some basic animation knowledge that if you want to animate something that's flying or coming towards the screen or moving away from the screen, you start out with it small and then you make it bigger. But that process was grueling. I just used a very basic copy paste on the different frames, and then I literally just tweaked it so that they would be smaller versions of themselves. And then I went back, as you just saw, and then edited the details so that it seemed a little more smooth with the transitions and everything. And that process alone took hours. It was probably the longest part of this entire thing. What you're seeing now is the profile view of our characters flying through space, which actually comprises most of the animation because, quite honestly, I was worn out by this point and I didn't know how else to kind of flesh it out. And I thought to myself, hey, this is a project for fun. I'm not doing this for my job. I'm not submitting this to an art institute or something like that. If I want my intro to be mostly us just flying through space, then that's good enough for me. So I'd say probably half of the animation is just a still image of us as you see on the screen right now in a profile shot. And I simply animated the stars flying behind us rather than moving us too much. And I thought that looked pretty cool. You have the start where we fly towards the screen, and then you have the next little section here of us flying through space, and then it goes on to us planting our feet on the moon, and then you see the thumbnail. And that was what I eventually came up with for the fully realized animation. But you can even see here I was struggling with perspective and the detail because even though the software that I'm using, as you can see, it's Pixel Edit. Pixel Edit is it's a very, very good software, and it gives you a lot of tools to use. But sometimes, if you don't know how to use those tools correctly and you don't have a good workflow, it can get a little tricky. And I always find myself getting lost in the layers of the project because you can use layers, as I've used here, to help you construct a scene and help with where a character is in relation to another one and whether or not they're in the background or the foreground. And you can use that to compose something. And as you can see right here, I was trying to get Christian's sprite to line up just right with mine so that it looked like we were flying side by side just as we were in the top screen over there. And right here, I'm kind of pushing us along and making it so for the first couple of frames of animation, we actually fly into view. And then after that, our characters are totally stationary. It's just the stars moving behind us, which is another function of using layers. I completely whited everything out, as you'll see in a minute here, and just pasted a screen grab of the stars from the thumbnail and used that behind us. Well, for the top segment of us coming towards the screen, what I used actually for this segment here are just a series of two lines, two different frames. That's all it is two different frames of lines. One's on the left side of the screen and one's on the right side of the screen. Yeah, and here I am giving myself my little shirt details. For anybody that doesn't know, Easter egg from my channel, if anybody cares, the shirt that I'm wearing in this intro sequence and in the thumbnail for the podcast is the shirt that I wore on my very first video on my channel, which was an ASMR parody. You can go check that out. That was from probably 4 or 5 years ago. So that's a fun little inside joke for myself. I still have that shirt, by the way. Yeah, here I am putting the stars in. And that's just using a layer that is underneath of the top layer. I just painted in the stars, and right here I was having a problem with color because, again, me struggling with layers. Sometimes if your background layer is behind your foreground layer, it'll keep the color and it'll mix the two colors when you're trying to paste it in. So I spent probably a solid half hour wondering why I wasn't drawing yellow, even though I had yellow selected. Um, yeah, and right here, like I said, the stars themselves are just two different frames of the stars at two different sides of the frame, side by side, over and over, so that it looks like we're flying past fields of stars at an incredible speed. um, but I was very happy at this point because all I had to do was copy and paste the frames over and over, and it actually has a decent effect of us flying very quickly past a bunch of stars. But here in a second, you'll see that for the rest of the animation, um, I animated our feet landing on the moon, and that was a little tricky for me too because I didn't really know how I wanted to create that other than knowing what I knew in my head, if that makes any sense. So I did another screen grab from our thumbnail. I just grabbed like a square of the moon and pasted it on where in the bottom couple of layers here, you see I'm extending the canvas so I can have more frames of animation. That's another thing. I did not realize how many frames of animation it was going to take in order to make a fully realized 8-second animation. That's all I was working with was 8 seconds. And it blew my mind how many frames of animation are just in 8 seconds. But I guess if you think about it, that's like 8 times 24 if you're just doing standard animation, which I wasn't. I was doing not an expanded form, but kind of a what's called keyframe animation, where you animate the keyframes of what you're doing, the most important things, and your mind kind of fills in the blank because it switches between the two so quickly and smoothly. That's a very crude, terrible explanation of keyframe animation. Don't take that and run with it in an art class, ladies and gentlemen. But as you can see here, I just screen grabbed a little portion of the moon from our thumbnail, which is in very high resolution, so I was able to fill an entire frame with it. And then I animated our feet. Just a little shadow of the foot, and the shadow gets bigger and bigger, and then eventually gets replaced by the entire foot. So that part wasn't too bad, but when I got done with it, when everything was said and done, Christian actually helped me re-edit the speed of the animation and how it plays out exactly so that it fit more in time with the music. And I may be wrong on this, but if you go back and watch like the very first episode of the podcast from the second season, and then you watch the most recent one, you'll see that the animation is actually timed out a little bit differently. And that was Christian's doing. After I made the full pixel art animation, he actually went back and re-edited the timing just a little bit so that it fit in with the music pretty well, and ended up working out a little bit better. So now you have the fully finished product that you see at the beginnings of our podcast every week. But this was an experience. I really enjoyed creating this, just like I enjoyed creating the tiny animations for our Christmas episode last season. And I definitely want to do more things like this in the future. I would love to create more little bits of animation for the podcasts, either as transitions, or maybe if we even get really detailed with it, I can do alternate intro sequences depending on the episode that we're doing. I'd love to take this concept and expand it. I think it would be tons of fun. But that's all the time I have right now. We're right at the end of my video capture footage, so I'm going to go ahead and fade to black. But I just want to thank everybody so much for watching, and this video and the podcast. We always appreciate the views that we get and the interaction that we get with people. And if you haven't checked out the podcast, head on over to Just One More Level Podcast, the YouTube channel, or you can actually visit our website at justonemorepodcasts.com. We have all of our episodes there. We have links to our socials and to our Facebook page, where we post updates and post when the next episode is going to come out and when we're going live. So if you haven't interacted on that way and you want to, go ahead and check it out. It's tons of fun. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. What's up, everybody? It's the Dorseman. Thank you so much for watching that video. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to check me out over on Just One More Level podcast. We put those out every Wednesday. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.